So, we would like to talk about the generation that drinks wine now. And I would like to introduce you to Alisa Selezneva. She brings a fresh consumer impact to the stage. She works for Innova Market Insights, an agency that scouts innovation around the world with a lot of people. She's senior market analysis. Her focus is on market intelligence. She also worked for companies like Bacardi and Coca-Cola, so you have really insights here from large companies as well, and from the industry. And so she is the best person we found to guide us through this latest trends and innovation things they are out there. Please.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you into this afternoon session on consumers. And we will start with talking about consumers, their behavior, how it changes, and how the market innovations reflect or not reflect consumer demand and consumer priorities in our amazing industry. So what we will cover today, we will talk a little bit about how consumption is changing from frequency occasions to selecting the occasions more specifically, so to intention. We will go a bit over the drivers rather than the limitations. We know it's a challenging time for the industry. We know about the no-low trends. But then we really want to see what drives consumers as well. So what do consumers still choose? How do they select their alcohol? And how can big players, small players appeal to their desires? Innovation and action, we will look a little bit at how the market is reflecting consumer sentiments and how the companies are innovating based on the driving factors. And then some key insights and takeaways. And for today's session, the key aim for me is to get you inspired, to get you thinking about the consumer, and to just a little bit of the inspiration for where the future of the categories lie. So let's start with a topic that, of course, was touched upon in this morning, and this is, of course, moderation. So we do know that consumers globally are interested in sober experimentation, and 36% of consumers globally express desire in trying a sober month. So as my colleague spoke about this morning as well, it goes over the dry January now, it goes beyond the dry January. People are trying sober months throughout the entire year. So it's not just the kind of starting the fresh year, fresh me agenda anymore. It's about sobriety overall. And then, of course, we have consumers who are willing to drink fewer. So 0.5% of consumers globally have expressed desires to drink fewer, but better quality. And better quality alcohol means there are opportunities to lure the consumer into the consumption occasions, of course. Now, when we talk about moderation, we see that 20% of consumers claim to have decreased their wine and spirits consumption over the past year. But of course, we want to understand why. Why are they doing it? Are they trying to reject alcohol altogether, or are there other reasons for that? And when we ask the consumer of why they're decreasing their wine and spirit consumption, number one reason is to take control of their alcohol intake. So it is about balancing. It is about taking control. It's not about rejection altogether. And it is very important because that's where the opportunities lie to select the alcohol of their choice, where they can actually feel more in control but still continue with their alcohol intake. And of course, we also have reasons such as spending power and other reasons of changing their lifestyles as well. Now, we know that consumers are influenced by the alcohol content. So they are looking at the amount of alcohol in a specific beverage. They are looking at ABV, and especially liquor and spirits consumers are, of course, sensitive to that. So they are looking for the innovations for new products that will help them to reduce their alcohol intake and to provide them options with lower alcohol content as well. And we are seeing market responding to that in different categories. So we are seeing low alcohol wines, for example, which is really showcasing on pack the communication for the consumer of how the producer tried to reduce the alcohol amount for a gentle and smoother experience. So there is a lot about on-pack communication and trying to get to the consumer the idea that they are helping you to select the alcohol beverage of your choice as well. Now, of course, we have examples from the hard spirits as well. We have this soju example with a lower ABV and lower calorie communication on pack as well, which means that they're really trying to give the consumer the control over the amount of alcohol, over the amount of calorie, over the amount of the everything they're actually intaking, so they can feel empowered. But of course, we don't want to focus on the moderation for this session. We also want to look at the drivers and what is happening with the consumer across the globe as well. Now, while we have this moderation trend, we're also seeing that curiosity about alcohol, alcoholic beverages, and what consumers are drinking is still there. 47% of consumers globally enjoy learning about their alcohol beverage. They want to know about the origin, the craft, how the brand is connecting to them, and what is the process behind the beverage they're choosing. We're also living in a wonderful era of global curiosity to global cuisines and international markets. And we have 45% of consumers enjoying alcohol, trying alcohol from other countries as well, whether it is a twist on the traditional alcohol or whether it's something new coming from another continent, another country, and another culture. So the relationship with alcohol is developing. The curiosity is there. And consumers are still looking for that emotional connection with the beverage and with the product of their choice. Now, I would like to talk to you about the drivers. So actually, what are the key drivers and what's in the product that is influencing consumers more and more? So we have asked consumers across the globe on what are the most important claims for them when they buy their alcoholic beverage. And of course, we will focus on the top three main factors. And number one, most important thing about alcoholic beverage the consumers are choosing is, of course, flavor. So flavor is still there. Flavor is still really important. It is important overall for the food and beverage. It is very important for the beverage categories. And it is very, very important for the alcoholic beverage categories. Consumers are lured in by the flavor. They do want flavor innovations. They are curious about trying different flavors. And we have one of the Bailey's example here, which is an interesting one because we're also seeing a rise of dessert flavors across the food and beverage industry overall. So that's one of the very trendy things. And further we go, the more we see curiosities for the dessert flavors. And of course, alcohol is a beautiful category for that as well. Number two, comes to no surprise to all of you, especially to the wine producers, is the product origin. We already spoke about how consumers are interested about the processing, the heritage, the origin of the drink, how they want to connect emotionally to the drink they're choosing. And of course, for wines, this is really important as well. And of course, the premium quality too. So top three factor is the premiumness of the drink. They would like high quality drink. We also saw that they're choosing more selectively and they want to try fewer but better quality drinks overall. So flavor, product origin, and premium quality are still top three claims for the consumers of alcohol. Now let's talk about flavor a little bit. So we have an annual flavor survey, and there we track consumer flavor preferences across all categories. So not just alcohol, we also track consumer preferences in flavors across food categories and across other beverage categories as well. So soft drinks, carbonates, juices, iced teas as well. And we ask consumers what type of flavors they prefer in each category. And it comes from fresh flavors, fruity flavors, mild flavors, soft flavors. And we also, there's one of the lines is also bold, intense flavors. And alcohol actually topped all categories for the consumer preference for bold and intense flavors. So this is really the category where the experiments and the innovations can really strive in that. And we're also seeing that in terms of the new product launches across the globe, when it comes to spirits and liquors, there is a very solid double-digit growth rates of more and more new products with hot and spicy flavors. And a few examples of how this comes to life in market, just for the inspiration. We see, of course, some, again, dessert-like flavors. So flavor from desserts, chocolate chili, that's entered the market quite a while, and that is becoming very popular. And chocolate is now also moving and experimenting its way in alcohol as well. Of course, inspirations from global cuisines and very straightforward collaborations for a very spicy Bloody Mary, Absolute Tabasco. experimenting with exactly that consumer audience that is preferring the hot and spicy flavors. And then, of course, no alcoholic options that are also experimenting with spices, with different types of botanicals and herbal ingredients to get that kick, to get that boldness of the flavor for the consumers, while offering consumer no low alcoholic options. Now, second factor that we talked about is the product origin, and it's also important to kind of deep dive a little bit more into that. So we've asked consumers what is the preferred type of products in spirits and liquors for them. And we see that consumers are kind of, some consumers prefer global ingredients, some prefer local ingredients. At the same time, we see that there is a strong desire for authentic and traditional drink, while there is curiosity for a new modern drink. And again, some product examples for the local ingredients. We have locally produced beverages, moonshine, and a very kind of artisanal can there. And then we have some interesting, of course, flavors with jalapeno peppers, for example, which is considered to be a global ingredient now, and consumers across the globe are recognizing it more and more. And then when it comes to the authenticity and traditionality, we see male consumers are actually over-indexing on it. So male consumers prefer more traditional and authentic drinks, while there are opportunities for new and modern developments and new and modern innovations as well. And I have a couple of examples here. One is, I could have put a Macallan or a Scotch on the authentic or traditional one, but I decided to just show some curious example that I quite found interesting. It's a limoncello that is trying to play in the aged category, aged territory as well. And then we have a Western adaptation of a Japanese gin. Of course, talking about wines, for wines, product origin is #1 most important claims for the consumers across the globe. And Latin American consumers are over-indexing on that, while North American and European consumers, around 29% for those regions, say that the most important claim is product origin, and with Asia-Pacific under-indexing for that factor. And here I wanted to showcase some of the traditional brands, of course, playing into the different blends of and showcasing on pack how consumers can relate to the region, how they can explore more about the origin of the region of the grapes, but then also some interesting initiatives to lure in the new and modern consumers. So this is a 19 Crimes wine from the US, and not only does it show where the grapes are coming from, which is very, very usual and traditional for the category, but it's also collaborating with Liquid Death. For those of you who don't know, it's a very, very bold, soft beverage energy drink. And they're not only going in energies now, they're going into the, they're going into the different brands. And yeah. So now then we have also the Lambrusco, which is partnering with a celebrity for a new and modern twist on the Italian wines. Now, when we talk about the final most important factor for the consumers is the premium perception. So we are seeing more and more new product launches that are showcasing indulgent and premium positioning in our categories, and it is growing year on year. But we also ask consumers what does quality mean for them, and we see that for younger consumers, for Gen Z and millennials, and I'm not going too much into the generational differences here, but the quality attributes that are over-indexing for the consumers across the globe are brand, pack presentation, and advertisement. And of course, we're seeing a few examples that are playing in that category, that are playing in that area. Very interesting and traditional brands innovating to attract more attention, but then also some more interesting brands. For example, this McBride Sisters wine, which is really, really showcasing the story of their brand, of how two sisters connected across the globe because of their wine passion. So really trying to connect to the modern consumers, trying to connect to the younger generations on the history of the brand, but also on the visual appeal, and of course on the advertisement on pack. So in a nutshell, value is shifting from volume to experience. We also have people who have claimed to increase their alcohol consumption, and from those who increased their alcohol consumption in the past year, we're seeing that a quarter of people say that they drink more alcohol because there is more variety, there is a lot of innovation happening, as we can all see, and more different brand lines, different products, different flavors are being introduced. And consumers now can connect to the brands through artisanal work on pack, for example, to interesting local adaptations of a global beverage, to different experimental batches for Scotch whiskies as well, where the brand is experimenting in small packagings, small batches. So moderation should be reframed as a premium opportunity. Consumers are looking for better experiences. Consumers are looking for the premium quality of their drinks. Discovery and distinctive flavors and interesting origins of the brands and interesting stories spark consumers' curiosity and spark consumer engagement. And of course, we're also seeing that experience is everything for the consumers now, so it really should drive and will drive the consumption. Thank you. That was Innova and Alisa. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Don't be shy. Yeah, there's one. Where's the microphone? Ah, there. There are the...
Yeah, I'm sorry. We couldn't see because of the chairs. Thank you so much for your amazing presentation.
Yes.
It was super interesting. We couldn't see the source, like
Yes.
how many people you interrogated, and
Yes.
can you tell us a bit about it?
So all of the information comes from Innova proprietary consumer surveys. So our category survey covers 30 countries, and the sample size is around 12,000 people for overall questions, 5,000 people for the questions on the origin, the preferred, whether they prefer origin, curiosity of the cultures, etc. And then also for the category specific, it is around 5,000 for wine, around 4,000 for liquors and spirits, and around 3,000 overall globally for sparklings. So quite a large sample of people. Age? 18 plus, and then we can spread by the demographic splits and generations as well. Sorry.
sorry, but we have
Gender, age, we do have, didn't include that as too much of the presentation, but we do have all of the differences and over-indexing genders, over-indexing demographics as well.
Can you please use your microphone, otherwise we don't hear anything?
Could you see a difference between genders and age?
Yes, for example, in that question on the preference for authenticity and traditionality, we do see that it's driven by male consumers. When it comes to the age, of course, Gen Z and millennials are more on the curiosity and brand connection side, whereas older consumers are a bit more traditional as well. So we do have all of the available information. We can speak a bit more if you want to know more details on that.
Any other question? So I have one. You talk a lot of moderation, and if you talk to wine producers, they ask you, but moderation means maybe less business. What do you advise them to do?
I think, so there was a speaker here earlier from the wine expert. I think she really said a very good thing, that actually it provides opportunities. So she described, and I fully agree with her, there are two types of consumers, and one type of consumer is a traditional wine consumer that maybe not necessarily understands why to reduce the amount of alcohol in the drinks, and that they are the biggest kind of they're the biggest barrier. But then also there are consumers who never tried alcohol. Maybe they don't want to try alcohol straight away, and that low wines, zero low, can be an entry for them as well. Or at least they can support that extra category of zeros and low alcohol as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Oh, there's one more question. The last one. Here, second row in the middle. No. We need a microphone.
No, I just had a question. Do you think that these trends towards moderation, are they short-term trends, or are they more so long-term? Because I know a lot of brands don't want to put all their eggs in one basket towards something that's incredibly fleeting. So if you could speak more on that.
I would say they're a bit more long-term.
Okay.
We are seeing that it is becoming more prominent year on year. There are alternatives. And the more companies innovate, we're seeing a lot of innovation in low, no, zeros for beers, RTDs as well. So for wines and liquors, it's still an exploratory area, but for example, for beers or ready-to-drinks, it's already a huge trend as well. So I would say it's long-term.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very much.
So, I'm often asked about Gen Z, boomers and millennials, but rarely about Gen X. That is what Kaleigh Theriault told me when we spoke about her presentation. So that's a problem because the data of Nielsen shows that ignoring Gen X means leaving real growth on the table. So that is why in her keynote she will look into what Gen X is motivates. So how is their wine behavior evolving? And why could overlooking them be a really costly mistake? Kaleigh is director of and thought leadership, I like that, of NielsenIQ. She has more than 10 years of experience working with clients in multiple categories. And she is the absolute expert to talk with us about generations. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anya, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And I got to be honest, I don't talk about Gen X very often. I feel like all of the conversations I've been having over the past few years in this beverage alcohol industry have been on either Gen Z, boomers aging out perhaps, millennials still doing their thing, and then just Gen Z not drinking. So I'm actually really excited to talk specifically about Gen X. But it was difficult to find some good data points, as many of you might expect, because Gen X sort of fall into that middle space. I'm Kaleigh Theriault, Director of Beverage Alcohol Thought Leadership, which really means I look at industry insights across total beer, wine, spirits, RTDs. In the US, a little bit of like the cannabis beverage stuff that's going on. But today we're going to get into specifically some of those wine trends with Gen X. So, 3 topics we're going to cover. We're going to notice the wallet. And what do I mean when I say that? Gen X is the spending powerhouse. And I think they're often overlooked as a consumer group on a broad scale. But we have some really good data that I'm going to show on how large this group actually is from a spending perspective. The second thing, we're going to notice their wine purchasing and their wine consumption. They are a generation that is already there. They're already consuming. You don't have to necessarily go out and recruit these new consumers, but it's how can we think about the occasions within that wine and that broader drinking set. And then we're going to notice the win and how to win with them. A lot of what Alisa touched on is going to really resonate with Gen X around premiumization and high quality, and they're also seeking out good value. So let's look at their spending. Last year, NielsenIQ put out a broader report with a company called World Data Lab, where we were able to analyze generational spend. We talk a lot about how large of a generation boomers are, how large of a generation millennials are, and now even how large Gen Z is going to be. And Gen X is one of the smaller generations. So we actually define Gen X as those born between 1965 and 1980. So we have about 15 to 16 years of consumers within that. And they're actually one of the smallest sets on a global scale of consumers, with representing 1.4 billion individuals. But when we look at their spend, they're actually in their peak earning years. So they are, at the top of their careers, perhaps. They're not, they might be looking towards retirement. They're not starting out in their jobs like those younger generations might be, but they're there and they're spending their dollars. They're also a unique generation and really hitting their stride, where they're not only spending for themselves, but they're also spending to take care of their parents that are aging. At the same time, they still have Gen Z living in their household, and I'm not going to tease too much of the Gen Z information, but a lot of them are still living at home with their Gen X parents. So we see that double spending coming in both directions from them, and so they are representing over $15.2 trillion in spend. Over the next decade, they're going to continue to be the highest spend generation, and we're projecting that for about the next 10 years on a global scale. So they're here, they're ready, and they're purchasing. So don't ignore them, as they have been for many, many years. So let's take a look at how they're purchasing beverage alcohol specifically. Total alcohol here of almost $700 billion for Gen X spend is going to represent total beer, wine, spirits, and sort of whatever else falls into that broader alcohol category. And that's across all generations, total consumer, total global spend. Now, when we look at Gen X specifically, they represent about 26% of that total dollar spend. They're well representing their generation compared to some of those younger generations. Now, when it comes to wine, they're even more present within the wine industry and spending a little bit more than what we would expect to see from them, spending about 27% of total wine dollars coming from that group. I want to zoom out a little bit, though, and talk about where some of the trends are happening across the globe and in certain regions. At NielsenIQ, we track both the off-premise, which is going to be, your traditional retail, your grocery stores, convenience stores, liquor stores, wherever you can really legally sell alcohol. And we also track the on-premise, so bars, cafes, restaurants, things like that. Now, what I did was I wanted to take a look at, where does this $692 billion sort of trend across this broader global space? And what we can see is that those more mature markets, North America, Europe, and APAC, are all facing, pretty significant declines when it comes to the off-premise side of things, specifically that North American market and the US. But we're also seeing some declines coming from the on-premise, where we have the ability to track that data. So those mature markets are facing those declines for all of the reasons that Alisa touched on. Moderation, premiumization is still helping some of these trends, but consumers just going out less often and purchasing less often is really what's influencing some of these numbers. And then we have some of our smaller markets, Latin America, South Africa, and Australia facing or finding some growth, whether that be in the on-premise or off-premise where we have available. Yes, off-premise will be traditional retailers where you purchase to take home to consume or take to a party to consume. So grocery stores, liquor stores, convenience stores, that's off-premise. Yep, and on-premise will be represented as bars, cafes, restaurants, where you actually purchase and you consume right there on the premise. So really, growth is hard to come by right now. I think that's really apparent through all of these sessions today. And so finding the right occasions, the right consumers, and specifically those Gen X is going to be really, really important. So when we look at some of our on-premise data, so again, those bars, cafes, restaurants, what are people drinking when they go out? We are able to track not only what they're drinking, but how they're choosing their drinks, where they're consuming them at, and we're able to break this down by all different demographics as well. So whether that be age, race, gender, demographics, things like that. And specifically, we're going to take a look at Gen X here on what they say they're drinking. And of course, we know they're a beer drinking generation. I think that's pretty obvious. They've really grown up with that industry over the past several years. And over half of consumers are stating that they do choose beer. Now, we also find there's a third of consumers that say that they just drink soft drinks. And one thing I want to note is they were able to select multiple categories here. And wine falls into that number 3 spot, where we see almost a quarter of Gen X saying, yes, I consume wine when I'm in the on-premise. And we see that there's a little bit of an over-index when we compare them to the average consumer or that total consumer at 105. Other things that do resonate with them, but on a lower scale, are things like cocktails, spirits with a mixer, drinks like that. We even see the ready-to-drink products and the no-lo being choices for them when they're in the on-premise, but it's not more than what we see among other generations. Now, switching back to looking at how wine is being purchased in the off-premise side of things, we can see that as we look at different ages and understand the relationship of how many people are purchasing and how much they're purchasing, it really increases over time. So we see that, and we know that Gen X are really double dependent. They've got those older consumers and the parents that they're taking care of, as well as their younger demographics. But they're still finding time to prioritize wine as they age through the category. And we know that wine really over-indexes with boomers. But Gen X, and here I'm using the age 50 to 64 as a proxy with how we break it down, is really falling right there behind that boomer generation and consuming more and purchasing more than those younger demographics. And often we overlook those, and I am guilty of that too, of overlooking them. So they're really that must-win middle for us. We need to look at them a little bit deeper, understand what else they're purchasing, but they're also that generation that's willing to premiumize their purchases as well. So how are they purchasing that still versus sparkling wine space? Again, Gen X is really hard to find some really good nuggets on and something that really sets them apart, but they're really just comfortable being like that total consumer and being representative. So these numbers look really similar when we look at the total, as well as looking at Gen X specifically when it comes to, how they purchase still versus sparkling wine. With still wine, we know that, still wine, table wine, we know that's the primary category that they're purchasing on a broad scale. They're purchasing on a regular basis, upwards or on average 16 times per year. They're going into a store and making a purchase for that still wine. When it comes to sparkling wine, though, they are a generation similar to others that reserve those sparkling moments to be celebratory, a little more intentional. It might be for a host gift, or it could be that they are hosting themselves. So although we see, some differences here, I think there's more that we can tap into, both on the still and the sparkling side. It's really further proof that we have a large group of consumers that are already available for us to tap into there. And I think that's really exciting because, again, Gen Z are going to be a little difficult to recruit. Millennials are there, but they're going through maybe starting their families and things like that. But Gen X are ready, and they're already purchasing within that wine space. So they're that reliable generation is what I would call them. They're not flashy. They're not going to be like Gen X, and they're not going to be like boomers either. They're just really classic when it comes to their repertoires. They are very traditional in what they choose to drink. They're not really skewed towards beer, wine, or spirits, but they're sort of consuming across all of these categories in a very fluid way. And what we find is that when they're out in the on-premise, about a third of consumers are going to stick to the same drink regardless of what the cuisine is. So as important as, that meal with the wine is for that consumer, they're just going to stick with their tried and true preference. We also find that when somebody chooses to drink beer or spirits on a normal occasion, but they decide to go outside that normal bubble and they want to swap for wine, about 25% of consumers, or 1 in 4, are opting for wine specifically and not some of those other categories. So even when it's not their first choice, it's going to be their second choice right there. Again, they're ready for us. And it comes down to that value equation for them. They want that craftsmanship, but they also want it at the right price. They're not the generation that is going to overspend on something just because they see it as a luxury, but it really needs to have that broader value proposition for them. And that has to come through, in the origin, in the alcohol amount, in the claims that are being put on package. They're really looking for that total package. And when it comes to value for money or thinking about luxury for them, Gen X is actually a generation that's not going to go out and purchase a bunch of things, but they're focused a little bit more on vacationing, getting out of the country, travel. They're willing to splurge on those moments, and wine is definitely right there for when they are in that luxury moment to, again, purchase. So let's take a look forward a little bit on what to expect for this year. Each year, NielsenIQ puts out a global report representing, I believe, 27 countries, about 19,000 consumers, where we get a better understanding of consumer sentiment, how somebody feels about their current financial positions, and we know that's really evolved over the last 6 or so years, and what their spending intentions look like for the coming year. So we specifically ask them about those alcoholic beverages. Again, not wine specific here, but I think it gives us a really good indication of where we expect to see spend happening this year. Gen Z millennials, they're expecting to really increase their spend this year compared to those that are spending less. Same thing with boomers. But Gen X, again, is that generation that sort of falls in the middle, where they're not going to cut back too much and they're not going to spend too much more, but they're really well balanced as a generation. And that's something that comes through. Now, one thing that we know with a lot of surveys, and we look at a ton of them here at NielsenIQ as well, is that what people say they're going to do and what they end up doing can often be different. And so I think that many consumers say they're going to spend a little bit less. Most consumers say they want to be healthier this year, but they're still going to opt for alcoholic beverages, especially wine, when it comes to those moments in which they're choosing to drink alcohol, especially if it's a social occasion with friends, with family, things like that. So as much as we say, they're going to do this, we're going to keep tracking to better understand what they're actually going to do when it comes to that purchasing. I think what's really going to be affected amongst all of these consumer groups in Gen X depends on their financial situations. So those that are going to be financially better off this year are definitely going to continue their spending, whereas those that feel like they're a little worse off in their financial positions are going to cut back on their spending. And through this survey, we're able to cut that down in all different ways, and I'm happy to share it with you all afterwards. So, what do the next 5 years look like? Going back to that report that we did with World Data Lab, we called it the X Factor, which I thought was really exciting because Gen X are truly often overlooked. One of the data points that I didn't include on a previous slide was that Gen X was over-indexing on a lot of questions with none of the above, as well as the things that come into the middle, like where they say, you know, you could say strongly disagree or strongly agree. Gen X was pretty neutral on a lot of things. So they're very much this, like, you know, I don't want to call them an average generation, but response-wise, they respond very much in a very neutral way. But they are excited to try new things, even though they have those traditions set in their ways of drinking. So looking at the next 5 years, Gen X are going to account for over $42 billion in growth when it comes to the beverage alcohol industry. And we can see that beer and spirits represent a portion of that growth, despite, you know, some of the declining industries that we're in right now. But when it comes to wine specifically, we're seeing almost half of the growth come from wine within that Gen X space. So it's a huge opportunity, and we actually have 2 regions that are going to account for the majority of this growth, and that's APAC and Europe. We also don't want to forget about the other mature markets like the US market, which I know that we will get to in a couple of days on this stage as well. So Gen X are definitely important for us to pay attention to because they are here and they're ready to drink these things. So how are we going to win Gen X? This is the money slide, I would say. We first want those value plus cues. We want Gen X to find value in the products that we're all producing. And we know that wine has such a history and such a story to tell, and that's important to them. While they do have their brands that they tend to lean towards, it's very important to have that varietal clarity, region cues, and taste notes ready for them to understand what's on the bottle. Simplify the choice. Because Gen X is taking care of their parents as well as their children that are still in the home, they don't have a lot of time. They don't have time to shop. They don't have time to make decisions and time to research things. So make it as simple as possible for Gen X to really understand what's on the label and what's going to be in that bottle. Occasion bundles. We got to break outside just the products specifically, but we have to pair it with an occasion. Are they hosting? Are they having a Tuesday meal? Are they gifting? Is it a celebratory moment? Really tying wine into those occasions is going to be key with these consumers. Trust signals, again, that ties back to those value cues, making sure that you have the right price and the right wine and that pairing, and they will trust your product. And on occasion, they like to explore, but they also appreciate when something is made in their home country. And finally, the right channel roles, so understanding the presence that Gen X are having in the on-premise, bars, restaurants, cafes, as well as how they're purchasing in that off-premise setting. So it's time to notice Gen X. You want to notice the wallet, notice the wine, and notice the win with them. And with that, I want to thank you all. I have a little QR code here if you want to instantly snap it and provide any feedback or get the slides.
I really like the part reliable, but willing to spend more. So what would you advise producer, where should they invest?
In wine specifically?
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a balance across, you know, not only the traditional still space, but as well as the sparkling side of things. And within that understanding, and we are able to get to that deeper varietal level. I didn't touch on it today, but definitely understanding what varietals they're already leaning into and making sure you're really providing a good quality wine in those spaces. It's maybe a little bit less about the varietal or the brand or things like that, but more about getting the right price and the value for them.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? We have not so much time, so a short one. Come on, someone? No? Okay, so it was really inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
When the industry talks about Gen Z and their values, we always wonder, do we know these values already? And do the values we think Gen Z is proclaiming to have, are they really come to buying, or is it more a thing they say? Or is it maybe the world's favorite myth that Gen Z is so different from us all? In his keynote, Hartwin Maas takes a look at that generation. He looks at the gap between moral aspiration and real purchasing behavior. Hartwin is a German futurist, that he says in his website, the founder of the Institute of Generational Research with over 20 years of experience in strategic consultancy focused on AI, digitization, and demographic changes. That's why we are here today. He has a background which I found quite interesting as an industrial engineer with experience from Malaysia and the Netherlands. So, we are ready to get your provocative reality check.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It was already said, Gen Z is one group which is most difficult to acquire. And let's have a look why it seems to be so difficult for us, mainly in comparison to other generations. And therefore, I give you some impulses, and it is your task to transfer these impulses to your industry. So one thing is Gen Z drinks less frequently, is more selective, and drinks more on special occasions. That is said. Let's have a look at these Gen Z. They love to eat pudding with fork. There was worldwide a trend, and brings it, of course, for the older generations, there's a big question mark. Why is that so spectacular for young people? Just keep in mind, the parents of these are Gen X and the baby boomers. So they treated it like this. When we ask young people why you have done this, they said this was the best thing I've done in the whole week. Eating pudding with fork. Another thing is what's coming up, granny style. It's getting, not going out, not having party, boozing, no, just staying at home, drink a cup of coffee, relax, and doing stuff what my grandmother has done, like this on the picture. Another thing what comes up is hobby horsing, hobby dogging, hobby sheeping, not with a real one, with a fake one. So this Gen Z, of course not everybody is doing that, but this is what we combine with Gen Z, and there's quite a big question mark, why are they doing this and how I'm supposed to acquire this kind of group. Seems to be quite difficult, but let's dig into that. For this I put up we did a lot of studies concerning Generation Z and Generation Alpha, which is the next one, and I will give you some results. First of all, we have a big social change. Everybody knows the demographics. Now we have the less birth rate ever had. Most of the countries, in India is the other way around. There we expect 370 million in Gen Z. In Germany is it's the smallest actually age cohort we ever had, and in several European countries as well. And for this we have already a big change in social society. For instance, we also ask old people, they feel all of a sudden younger than they really are. 70-year-old people feel 10 years younger than they really are. Men even 14 years younger than they really are. So, and also old people jump into social areas for young people. Just look at social media. Now old people all of a sudden dance on TikTok, which is supposed to be a room for youth people. So there's not a big distinguish between young and youth. It's like swimming together. And this is also difficult for young people. Where's actually my area? When I'm going out in the city, for instance, in Düsseldorf, I see a lot of old people. Where are the young people? Demographics say there are not many people. So it's one thing. Another thing what changes in the most OECD countries is that parents spend much more time with their kids than 10, 20 years before. Not only the mother, also the father. And that changes in the relationship between the parents and the kids. So kids grow up on the same eye level like their parents. They're involved in very important decision-making processes, which in former times the parents decided where to go to the holidays, and nowadays the kid decides we go to the sea or to the Alps, for instance. So being in the process of decision making all the time makes things differently as well when they enter, for instance, work or when they go for shopping. So their decision has a big value in this relationship. Another thing is that parents nowadays are the biggest fans of their kids. They're not the parents anymore, they're the best buddies. They follow them on social media, they track them. But I would say the rockstar phenomenon. The rockstar has a lot of fans, but the rockstar is not a fan of its fans. And this is like we do with the change in the parent-child relationship. Another one is digitalization. 80% of young people cannot imagine anymore in the future a daily life without AI. 80%. 30%, so 1 of 3 buys things on social media because of influencers. So it has a huge impact, and also to your industry. On another side, we have this oversaturation. So if we have a lot, and nowadays we were not, or it's a time we've never been so wealthy like in nowadays, even if we don't want to see it like this, but it is. We have a lot and too many things of everything. So what does it mean for things when I get? It doesn't have the same value. If I just have 3 things, I'm quite satisfied with the one I choose. If I have 10, 20, 30 things, whatever I choose, I will not be satisfied with my choice. Yeah, even psychologists speak about fear of better options. Whatever I choose, I always have the doubt, is this the right choice I've ever done for the future of my life? So more makes it even unsatisfied. And if I don't have the choice to choose because I'm trained like this, that I have a huge part of options, then I will be disappointed. It will be like also with the parents, we have like helicopter elders parents or lawn mover parents. So if there's any conflict with the kids, the parents are involved. So we have now less coping strategies of Gen Z like the former generations, for instance, Gen X. So what does that mean? If I'm not down how to deal with discussions, how to deal with conflicts, I'm avoiding that. So I don't want to go into conflicts, I'm avoiding that. I don't want to have any gray spaces or unsecurity, I want it completely secure. Also with the shopping, I don't want to have any stress. Keep the friction low and just bring it to it. This is what we see a lot in this point. And we also see that the frame is changing, especially for young people, because we have these helicopter parents. I'm not talking about you, but I think I'm sure you know somebody who are like this in your relationships. The frame is changing. So the young people are not aware of this, that they can change things because everything is done for them. So everything is mown away, like the grass is a conflict and the lawn mower is just cutting the grass away, so the child has not even the chance to fall down anymore. And so we have this protection. So what does it mean if you are not aware that you can change your own frame? If there is coming a conflict, it's tremendous effect on you. So you avoid this as well. On the other side, the oversaturating, you know, the parents are X and baby boomers, and they don't do that. Just imagine for the one who are in Generation X or baby boomer, did your parents know what you watched on TV on these 2 channels, what was possible in their times? No, definitely not. And nowadays the parents know the dog names of for instance, the shows, what they look together, like Paw Patrol or stuff like this. They know the names of the dogs, so it's completely different. And here we see also the happy birthday for the child's birthday is like becoming a battle between the parents. And that has, of course, an effect. Going further, we see that the technology is coming immersive, is coming more and more. We see the baby boomers, they were quite analog, also Generation X. And why was the shift to the digitalization? Generation Z grew up with the mobile, grew up with apps, grew up with social media, and Gen Alpha will definitely grow up with more and more AI. And that, of course, what I have an example what has the effect on this. This is an influencer, Little Michaela. Does anybody know Little Michaela? Yeah. This is the average when I ask one person or zero, yeah, knows Little Michaela. The interesting thing is, would you follow her? She's eating the wrong product, I know, but would you follow her seeing this like this? Not really, okay. 2017, two bots recognized there's no youth about Little Michaela. She has no childhood, no youth. Who is this? And these two bots recognized that Little Michaela is 100% AI generated. She's not real. So knowing that, would you follow her now? Not really, okay. For young people, it doesn't matter if she's real or not, if she's AI generated or not. And that makes a complete new perspective on digitalization, on AI as well. So keep that in mind, how much the effect is from the technique. Now, seeing these generations on this graph, you see that we enter differently into this perspective of digitalization. The older generations, they come from the analog thinking, enter digitalization, and then they are quite disappointed if it's not working and say the analog time was much better. So young people, they enter the digitalization, and if it doesn't work, there's nothing. There's no training set of going back to the analog world because I've never seen that. I grew up in the digital world, and this is a completely shift in thinking, in behavior, what we see especially in these hobbies, what I said at the beginning. This we have to keep in mind. The shift in behavior and the shift in thinking is completely different. Maybe one of you know these catastrophic things when the magnet is stripped, but we know how to fix it. A lot of people say the young people don't know it anymore. What does it mean? What is it for? You can listen to music with this surprise. Yeah. This is something. This is a knowledge we don't know. We don't need anymore in the future anymore. Is this interesting for a museum? Yes, but for the young people, that doesn't have any effect. It doesn't change me anything. There's even the thinking, if somebody doesn't know what is Insta, what is wrong with this person? I cannot trust this person anymore. So it's a completely different world they grew up, and the speed is tremendous. We have the innovation cycles getting less and less shorter, and this we have to be aware of. And one thing which is quite successful, we had a look on TikTok shops, which came up last year in Germany, and we had this was in New York, on a store, in the Crumble store, and you see a huge, the queue was more than 100 meters long for a donut shop. Nothing special, but it was promoted via TikTok. And you see the combination was here quite clever. You're online, but you distribute offline. And this is nice to combine. So for these who would like, I recommend everybody to dig into this much more and do the TikTok shop, because they have this feature, the MER exposure process. So you need 10 points, not even less than a second is enough to get triggered on this point. And this is what TikTok also says. 1 second is a reasonable few for us. It's enough, we don't need more. Just 1 second. There you see the speed in this. Also, the word of mouth is pretty easy on this. If we have a good feeling, if we have a good event we want to share on, and social media is perfect on sharing that worldwide. You just Generation X or Baby Boomer, they thought on a narrow place because the friends were in the same village or same town, and that's it. But the young people think globally, and they share globally, and they're affected also on the global events as well. And we are afraid of loss. We don't feel good if we have the feeling of loss. And even loss hurts more than gain on the same magnitude if we make it on this to get something new. And this is what TikTok is playing very well on these features. So, many young people operate with the mainstream. They don't see any sense to stick out of the mainstream. Now we just heard about Gen X. They was completely different. I don't want to be the mainstream, I want to be different. Now we have it like, I want to be in the mainstream. I don't see any sense to be outside the mainstream, but I want to be perceived differently. So make me very different that I be in the mainstream. That is what you should remember about Gen Z. They're looking for individually, but they want to be in the mainstream. This for some, it sounds paradox, but it isn't. They emphasize uniqueness, but at the same time notes that the pursuit of uniqueness often creates a collective mass of individuals who all do the same thing in order to be different. This is completely different to Gen X. This is quite interesting. Fear was also mentioned on the former presentation. The young generation is the most feared generation. They feel the most insecure, the most unhappiest we ever had. And even they have we never had that much options nowadays for the young people, and they don't feel satisfied. They're unsatisfied, they feel even fear. Now we made a comparison with the 3 different countries, and to have the graph is quite interesting. Germany has the most unsecure feeling, Switzerland the most, and Netherlands is more or less the same. Yeah, what does it mean in the consumer behavior? Let's have a look. So we have, compared to 2009, problem, I find solutions to my problems is getting less. Even my decision was good, the feeling is getting down. To take responsibility is going down, quite a lot even. And I have all options on a planet I can take. The feeling is getting down. So even we have a lot of options, they don't feel that they can take them. So they perceived a narrow scope for action. And that's quite interesting. So also here, security is very important. Furthermore, I try something new. It's getting less. So to try something new is unsecure. I don't want to do that. My life is plannable, is getting less, the feeling. And I have the feeling that my part, I can influence something, is even going less as well, is getting more in the feeling, so I don't have much more influence in this world. So I'm going back and do more that granny style, have a cup of coffee, because there I feel secure, I don't have to make a big decision. So what to do? Gen Z needs decision-making aids to do reduce decision complexity. So we have the most opportunities. I want to have a help. We even speak about depressions of options. There are too many options. I cannot decide. Please help me to do the right choice. And frictionless shopping. I don't want any inconvenience while shopping. That is why TikTok Shop is super successful, because I just need one click and I buy it. And this you have to transfer onto your consumer thing as well. The higher stress levels and they are quite high, the stress levels. We had certain researchers concerning this. They're quite high, and you have to put them down. You have to give the feeling of security, and you have to help them to make a decision. I see you are looking on the watch. Okay, good. Therefore, signature orientation, atmosphere, convenience, and price transparency should be made more visible on and offline. So you have to make the switch, or the combination of on and offline. You cannot see, okay, Gen Z, I only tracked offline. No, that's wrong, and I go only online. You have to make the omni-channel. You have to transfer it on every level. Then one which we are always asked, the young people are so sustainable. I keep it short. They are not. For them, it's normal, because we produce that into them, that they behave on a sustainable level, but we have a quite big attitude behavior gap on sustainability. Price is number one. It doesn't matter what comes. And this is what many studies results on this. So you see, the complexity is quite high. It's not only going left or right or gray or black or white. So it's quite a gray zone to attract these people, to acquire this. And here were some impulses to do so. And I have one thing which combines this all, and then I come to the conclusion. Today, products must be perceived as curated, so analog-wise, and guided algorithmically through the customer journey. So you have to make this combination to be successful, to attract the Gen Z. Thank you very much.
Wow, we will see. It's not easy to get this Gen Z buying things. But are there any questions? 2 questions I take. because we are running out of time. Are there 2 questions? 1, 2, 3? No. So, one piece of advice for the wine industry. If I'm a producer, what should I do?
You should yeah. Now we don't have that much time, huh?
Yeah, that's where I said 1.
You have to combine. This is what I said. You have to combine. It's an analog product. You have a lot of emotions packed in it. Put it online, but don't lose the emotions in that. So it's supposed to be curated. Yeah, they want to receive it curated, but you have to treat them to lead them algorithmically wise to that. Because the community, they communicate via social media, they are online, they're 4 to 5 hours online each day, mostly on social media, and this is what you cannot miss this spot. And a lot of are affected with influencer, for instance, but there is quite difficult this area to touch it. So if you don't know anything about this, I advise you to take advice from some professionals before entering this.
Thank you very much.